Welcome, Mississippi State fans and all SEC football fans, to the Junction on the campus of Mississippi State University. And Steve, seems to be a lot going on here today.
Yeah, definitely a big weekend. SEC Nation is here. They'll be broadcasting the SEC Nation show. Paul Feinbaum shot today, and then
You mean?
yeah. We could spend the whole segment on that, but and the merits of that and SEC Network. But that being said, tomorrow will be a big day. They'll have the pregame show here live from the Junction. Tim Tebow will be here. Kind of interesting, Nick Fitzgerald kind of closing in on that quarterback rushing record. A big game last weekend could have made that attainable this weekend. It would take a Herculean effort this weekend, but still an interesting dynamic. And with Tim Tebow being here, Dan Mullen being here, it seems like old times.
In some ways it is, but it's a very new time because now this is Joe Moorhead's Bulldog program. And yes, I took a shot in the face mask, as we like to say, last Saturday at Kentucky. But then again, Florida also lost to Kentucky, so they have some common ground in that regard. We'll get to the Mullen and the other things like that later. Let's talk about the matchup right now. We've all looked at Florida. We've heard what our coaches and players have to say about that. I think it comes down to one thing, Steve. If you're going to really oversimplify, Florida is number 13 in the SEC in rushing defense. Despite their lax effort last weekend, the Bulldogs are still among the SEC's best and the nation's best in rushing the football. Is that what this game comes down to tomorrow?
David, in many respects, I think you're right. Florida has only outrushed their opponents by a combined 5 yards on the season, which is kind of head-scratching for a Dan Mullen team. Dan spreads it out, but really Dan's a Big Ten coach, just kind of spreads it out. He wants to run the football. They haven't been successful in that respect in many regards, and Felipe Franks, that's not really his skill set. He's a guy that really needs to throw the football around. Florida does a by-committee approach at running backs. It'll be much different. But Mississippi State, there's two things they want to do tomorrow in addition to win the football game. They want to establish the run. They want to stop the run, and we've heard that from players all week.
Now, we've gone through early in the week why State got away from the run at Kentucky. There were a lot of factors, penalties, lack of focus in the offensive line. A lot of things just went wrong that did not allow State to do what it wanted to do. So when State comes out and tries to run the ball, it's not that like they're trying to fix anything from last week. They're just getting back to what they do best. But they've got to dictate the circumstances and not let circumstances dictate to them what they do with the football.
They do. I think State, in many respects, kind of shell-shocked at times a little bit. I think Kentucky had a great game plan, really kind of got in State's head, not just from an emotional point of view, but very frustrated the Bulldog offense with their late shifts. Florida will look to duplicate some of that, but listen, Todd Grantham is who he is. It's going to be a blitz-happy scheme, so the hot reads and the quick hitters are going to be a big part of things for the Bulldog offense. And here's the thing, David. Mississippi State wants to run the football. They want to get Nick Fitzgerald out time. This offensive staff will find a way to get Nick Fitzgerald, Eris Williams, and Colin Hill some carries in space this weekend.
Now, Todd Grantham stepped down there, and he inherited a defense that has been the strength of the Gator program. That doesn't mean it's a great defense. It just means it's been the strength of the program. They're used to playing solid defense. Maybe not the talent top to bottom the Bulldogs have in their starting lineup, but certainly have the experience and I think a comfort factor. But by the same token, we watched what Grantham did last year. He can be steady for 3 out of 5 plays or 7 out of 10 plays. It's the plays where things break down that a team has to cash in. The good teams did it last year.
Well, yeah, that's one thing. Grantham's a very high-risk reward defense. When they do make some mistakes, you've got to be able to exploit those, as we saw with Alabama. State plays a great defense for 3 7/8 of a quarter, and then there's one breakdown. Next thing you know, you've lost the ball game. And I hate to pour salt in an old wound, but that's the reality of it. But Todd Grantham did a great job here for Mississippi State. The best defense of the Dan Mullen era by far. Bob Shoop, kind of similar in many respects. They run a few different things schematically, but their pressure and their attitude towards defense is the same. We expect defense to be a big part of things tomorrow. I don't think you're going to see a shootout.
As of right now, of course, the weather looks better. It's overcast today, but no rain. Should not be any rain this evening or tomorrow. Some sunshine come out, low 80s temperatures. So conditions will not be a factor except for maybe some of the grass parking lots on campus. But, hey, just plan to get here a little earlier and find your place and don't worry about it and show up for the game. All right, let's turn to the intangibles. As bad as the defeat was last weekend, I think it may, as far as this game goes, not the season but this game, turn into a positive in this respect. It has taken the Bulldog attention off the emotional issues of facing their former coach and staff and on fixing themselves because they know they cannot let another SEC game get away.
David, I think there's some truth in that. And, you hate to lose a ball game and you hate to have to lose a ball game to learn a lesson. But, I don't care what anybody says, that they were overlooking Kentucky a little bit. I mean, it's only human nature to think about the emotional way that Dan Mullen left and the wounds it left on these players that really felt like he was going to be here and kind of took him at his word. But you're right, David. There's been kind of a central focus this week is it's about us. It's not about them. It's about what we do and didn't do last week. And Coach Moorhead has kind of instilled in these guys, look, we're going to play up to our standard of football no matter who we're playing. I don't know that State has done that through 4 games, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if you necessarily had a clean game. This would be a great time to put everything together.
Do you expect the deep passing game to still be part of it tomorrow? Because that is the one big difference. Yes, both coaches are spread coaches. Mississippi State, with rare exceptions under Dan Mullen, did not try to throw the ball long and rarely had to in most years. Joe Moorhead wants to throw the ball long. But do you see him adjusting maybe his blocking schemes a little bit this week to give Nick Fitzgerald more time to throw long? Because Kentucky showed the template of what to do. Just blitz like crazy from one side, overload the other side, and take your chances downfield in one-on-one matchups.
Yeah, David, it's all going to be about pass protection. I mean, I think ideally they would love to be able to take some shots down the field, but it's going to be about how well you can protect the quarterback. Now, what I do think can happen is State can move the pocket a little bit. You can even work some RPO stuff, rolling the quarterback right, keeping a receiver in and running one deep and giving Nick Fitzgerald the high-low option as well as the ability to run there. Joe Moorhead did not forget how to coach, and he reminded us that on Monday, that the players didn't forget how to play and coaches didn't forget how to coach. They will have a sound scheme that will get Nick Fitzgerald the time necessary to make some shots down the field. How much of a commitment they make to that remains to be seen, but I'm certain that you'll see Nick Fitzgerald throw the ball down the field.
And really a factor we have not talked about all week, and he was not even asked directly himself. Coach Joe Moorhead came out on Monday, was very strong in his press conference, even dropped a couple of words that probably he may not have intended to, but certainly the kind of talk he would use to his team there to express his feelings. Because, fans have this idea that he's a cool, calm guy on the sideline. Well, I think he's presenting that image because he wants to keep under control. Behind the scenes, he's much more emotional. He cracked that veneer just a little bit in Monday's press conference. Steve, do you think there's anything about Dan Mullen's return, Todd Grantham's return, this staff, the awareness these players have of their former coaches, that maybe has affected Joe Moorhead this week? I simply throw that as a theoretical question because I think I know your answer.
Well, it would only be human nature. I mean, it's just like, for all of you high school ball players, when your girlfriend's ex-boyfriend lined up across from you, you wanted to whip him. This is similar in that respect. Dan Mullen's coming back. He was a very popular coach. He left under some circumstances that could have been better as far as the fans go. But all that said, Joe Moorhead in many ways is in a must-win situation. I think there are some Bulldog fans that simply would not be able to forgive him for losing this ball game. And that's harsh, but that's the reality of where we are today. Because of the fact the relationship is so acrimonious between Dan Mullen and Mississippi State, I think Joe probably feeling a little pressure. There is more pressure on Joe to win this game than there is Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen's pressure is all internal. Joe Moorhead's pressure is internal as well as external from a Bulldog Nation that just simply has to have a win.
Now, we say that, but let's make utterly clear. What happens tomorrow will not determine Joe Moorhead's career at Mississippi State, but it will impact the perception in the shorter term. Maybe a little on recruiting, but I think so much recruiting is done at this point it won't affect this class. It's more about how the fan base accepts him because they've been all gung-ho up until now, and, fans are fans. They're going to overreact to the positive and to the negative as well. So it would certainly be greatly to his benefit to come away, but I think he's taking the right approach. All he cares about is getting that first SEC win, balancing the SEC record, and attacking the remaining 7 games, including those big SEC matchups to come up with a couple of Tiger teams. You want to go into those momentum. That's what he cares about much more than beating whoever is wearing the visor on the other sideline.
And that's true, David. I think you hit it correctly. It's not going to determine his fate. It will determine the perception that many fans have of this coach staff for at least this year. And here's the bottom line with that, David. You had a loss last weekend that was unexpected. And a win this week, this is the one many people circled as the first half of the season. Number 2 this year, you got to get the egg back and you got to beat Florida. You win this week. I won't say all is forgiven, but a lot is forgiven, and winning covers a multitude of sin in this part of the country.
All right, I mentioned recruiting quickly. What do you know about this weekend's recruiting visit? Because obviously with Florida and Auburn coming up, these are 2 weekends that Joe Moorhead's staff want to hit it as hard as they can. But then again, this class is pretty well finished for this year.
Yeah, you want to get a head start on 2020, but you'll have some of the best. I mean, Jonathan Mingo's the guy that's committed to Ole Miss. Will be here. Derek Hall, priority linebacking target. State's been on him for 2 years now. He'll be here this weekend, his first ball game of the year. So it's important that State go out and have a good showing. But it never boils down to one ball game. But you want to have those guys on your campus rather than other guys so you can love on them and show them what they'd be a part of. That's a big part of things. If a guy's considering your school never comes to a football game, you got to wonder how serious his interest is. But State will have a star-studded cast this weekend. We've already got a full list of visitors. There'll be some adjustments, and that's one of the things about putting those lists up. We could have 200 names on there, and 195 of them show up and 5 don't, and that's the ones we end up talking about, the ones that don't show. But yeah, it'll be a big deal with Ole Miss out of town this weekend. State pretty much has the in-state crop to themselves, and they'll take advantage of that.
So we'll see if the Bulldogs can also take advantage of the main thing tomorrow, which is taking care of business on Scott Field, impressing those recruits, but more so impressing the fans that, yes, this program has picked the right coach, is on the right track, which I think all of us tend to agree is the case. You just like to have those reminders of progress immediately, especially with such a veteran team at this point. So if those veterans can put it back together and play the game as they should play, both sides of the ball and special teams, I think the Bulldogs are in good shape for tomorrow. But you have to kick it off and find out. So at 5 o'clock tomorrow, I'm sorry, 5:01 exactly, the game will be getting underway here. We expect a packed house. It has been a sellout for several weeks. And, of course, as Steve mentioned, we have SEC Nation in town. A lot of activity taking place this afternoon on campus. Soccer is hosting Florida tonight. Some other things going on. I believe I have to throw this in. From what I understand, Mississippi State is the ranked team this one. Florida is not the ranked team. Quite a role reversal, so a big chance for the program to get off of the right foot there. And, of course, women's basketball and men's basketball practice is underway. You had a chance to talk to Anriel Howard, one of the new players of great interest to the program. I know Coach Vic Schaefer had his comments. Robbie Falk was there covering as well. And then we'll be getting into men's basketball. So a lot about to start happening, but it all comes down to kickoff at 5:01 tomorrow, Steve.
It does, David. And the Bulldog Bash is tonight. It's a great weekend to be in Starkville. So if you're on the fence about coming, come on in. Ticket prices have gone down on the secondary market. Some people probably regretting buying them a month ago and paying $200 a head. But yeah, you should be able to find a ticket, just not through the official ticket office. So we encourage you to be smart with your purchases there. But come on out and be a part of this as Mississippi State gets ready to beat Florida.
And we always warn you, make sure you're buying a real ticket. Be careful, check those things out because fake tickets are much more easily caught today. You also, reminder too, you have the clear bag policy, metal detectors at the gates, all things. Get here a little earlier. Yes, it's an inconvenience, but it's the reality of modern sports and all sports. So just make allowances for it. Don't let that deter from a good Saturday on campus and hopefully a great Bulldog victory. For our staff at Gene's Page 24/7 here at the Junction on the campus of Mississippi State University, for Steve Robertson, this is David Murray.